Soft tendrils of starlight drift across the ancient hills of Greece, where olive groves whisper secrets older than memory, and the marble temples glow with an inner light beneath the eternal moon. Welcome, dear friends of Greek mythology, to another peaceful journey through the timeless stories that have soothed humanity for thousands of years. Tonight, we wander alongside the goddess of the harvest as she moves through her sacred valley, finding peace in the rhythms of earth and sky. Before we begin this gentle voyage into the realm of the divine, if you enjoy these quiet journeys through ancient myth, feel free to subscribe to Greek Myths for sleep and leave a gentle like. It helps this story reach others who need rest, just like you. In the star-washed valley of Eleusis, the goddess of grain walks barefoot through tender shoots that rise to greet her every step. Demeter moves slowly, as though the earth itself were a sleeping child she does not wish to wake. Dew clings to the hem of her linen robe, and every bead of moisture catches a spark of distant torchlight from the temple behind her, turning the droplets into tiny, wandering constellations. Where her feet touch soil, a faint warmth spreads outward, and the scent of fresh bread drifts upward from the ground. For every crumb of earth remembers the loaves once broken here in her honor. The night air is thick with the low hum of crickets, a sound so constant it becomes a form of silence, and the gentler hush of olive leaves brushing one another like pages in an old book being turned by an unseen hand. Overhead, the moon drifts in a slow arc, pale as polished marble, and the goddess lifts her gaze to it in quiet greeting, the way an elder might nod to a familiar friend. Her pace is unhurried, a rhythm learned from the patient turning of seasons, from the long, slow wait for a seed to break its shell in the dark and silent earth. She is not walking to a destination, but inhabiting the journey, becoming one with the quiet pulse of the land she loves. The soles of her feet read the story of the soil beneath them, each texture a different chapter in the endless book of the earth. Here, the fine, silty loam left by a winter flood, still holding a memory of rushing water in its smooth, cool surface. There, a patch of clay, dense and stubborn, remembering the deep thirst of summer when the rains forgot to come. She feels the faint tremor of a mole tunneling deep below, its small claws working tirelessly in the velvet darkness, creating tiny highways beneath the surface world. She senses the slow, persistent searching of roots, extending themselves like fingers into the nourishing blackness, each tendril following the faintest trace of moisture, the subtlest gradients of minerals and nutrients. Nothing is lost on her, for she is not merely passing through this world, but serving as its waking consciousness, its gentle, breathing heart. Every blade of grass knows her footfall. Every stone remembers her touch from ages past. Every grain of sand holds within it the memory of mountains that once stood tall and proud before time, ground them down to this peaceful valley floor. The barley is young, its stalks still tender and green beneath their silver wash of moonlight. It reaches just to her knees, and as she moves through it, the feathery heads of the grain brush against her skin with a sound like sighing, a collective exhalation of growth and contentment. She remembers planting this very field, not with her hands alone, but with a thought, a blessing whispered into the wind that carried the seeds from her palm and scattered them in perfect, life-giving rows. The memory brings a soft smile to her lips, for she recalls how the wind had danced that day, playful as a child, teasing the seeds this way, and that before settling them exactly where they needed to be. She had walked this same path then, under a bright sun that painted everything in shades of gold and amber, her heart full of the promise of growth, a vibrant, forward-looking hope that sang in her veins like the sap rising in spring trees. The earth had been dark and eager then, drinking in the seeds like a thirsty traveler at a well, and she had felt the land's joy as a physical sensation, a warmth that spread from her feet to her crown. Now, under the moon's gentle gaze, her heart holds a different sentiment, equally precious. The quiet satisfaction of that promise fulfilled, a peace that looks both backward in gratitude and forward in calm acceptance of the eternal cycle. The air itself is a tapestry of scents, each one telling its own story, weaving together into a narrative of the night. Beneath the dominant aroma of baking bread that rises mysteriously from the soil wherever she walks, there is the sharp, clean fragrance of crushed mint, where her foot has accidentally bruised a wild-growing sprig, releasing a tiny, bright burst of scent into the calm air. The mint speaks of hidden springs and secret grottos where nymphs once played, their laughter still echoing faintly in the plant's essential oils. There is the faint, honeyed perfume of night-blooming clover, its tiny blossoms closed for sleep, but still breathing their sweetness into the air, dreaming perhaps of the bees that will visit them come dawn. And deeper still, beneath all these surface notes, there is the fundamental scent of the earth itself, damp, rich, and ancient. The smell of life and decay held in perfect, eternal balance. It is the scent of beginnings and endings, of the great wheel turning, of time itself made manifest in the slow transformation of leaf to loam, of stone to soil. This is the perfume she knows best, the one that runs in her veins like ichor, the golden blood of the gods. It speaks to her of home, not the celestial halls of Olympus with their polished floors and perfect light, but this deeper home, this connection to the breathing earth that defines her very essence. Each step she takes is a meditation, an act of communion between the divine and the mortal realm. She feels the resilience of the earth beneath her weight, the way it yields slightly before supporting her, a silent dialogue of trust that has been ongoing since the first seeds were ever planted by human hands. Her presence here is not an intrusion, but a completion, as much a part of the landscape as the stones that have rested in the same spot for millennia. as the trees whose roots delve deep into the hidden waterways below. The natural world recognizes her as its queen, not through power or dominion, but through a reciprocal love and a profound cellular understanding that transcends language or thought. As she walks, memories drift through her mind like clouds across the moon, each one casting its own gentle shadow before passing on. She remembers the first mortal woman who ever asked her blessing on a field, a young bride new to farming, her hands still soft from her father's house, her eyes bright with hope and fear in equal measure. Demeter had come to her in dreams, showing her which seeds to save, when to plant, how to read the signs in wind and rain. She remembers the woman's joy at her first harvest, how she had wept with gratitude, leaving the finest sheaf upon a stone as an offering. That stone still stands somewhere in this valley, worn smooth by centuries of similar offerings, each one a small prayer of thanksgiving. Farther along the path, the barley parts to reveal a small shrine of unworked stone, its altar strewn with poppy petals and the first wheat ears of the season. Demeter kneels, her knees pressing softly into the earth, and immediately the scent of crushed chamomile rises around her like a gentle sigh. The plants seem to know her, bending toward her presence like flowers following the sun. She lays her palm upon the altar's cool surface, feeling the countless hands that have touched this stone before her, each one leaving an invisible imprint of hope or gratitude, sorrow or joy. A single ember of gold kindles beneath her hand, spreading into a gentle glow that does not burn, but warms like a hearth scene through a cottage window on a winter's night. The light spreads slowly, like honey poured from a jar, illuminating the humble offerings without consuming them. In this glow, she sees not just the present moment, but all moments, layered like translucent veils. She remembers every seed she has ever coaxed open, from the first wild grains that humans learned to cultivate to the plump kernels that now feed entire civilizations. She sees every furrow she has guided rain to fill, every drought she has softened with morning dew, every kernel that has rested in a child's cupped hands, precious as gold coins. The memories settle over her like a linen sheet, soft and encompassing, and her breathing slows to match the rhythm of the sleeping land. Each breath draws in the peace of the night, and each exhalation sends blessings rippling outward in invisible waves. The shrine itself seems to breathe with her, the stones expanding and contracting imperceptibly, as if they too are alive in some quiet, ancient way. The shrine is humble, built not by priests or architects seeking fame, but by a farmer whose family has tilled this land for generations uncounted. The stones are field stones, gathered one by one from the edges of the barley fields where they were turned up by the plow, their surfaces covered in soft green moss and gray lichen that trace patterns like maps of forgotten kingdoms. Each stone was chosen with care, not for its beauty, but for its sense of rightness, way it fit with its neighbors to create this simple, sacred space. There is no roof here, no grand design to impress the eye or inspire awe, only a flat-topped stone that serves as the altar and two smaller stones flanking it like silent guardians. The poppy petals scattered across the altar are a deep, velvety red like drops of wine or blood, but they are not a symbol of sacrifice or violence. They are an offering of sleep, of rest, a plea for the land to lie quiet and gather its strength through the dark months, a promise that the farmer, too, will rest when his labors are complete. The poppies speak of dreams and forgetting, of the gentle oblivion that allows all living things to renew themselves. The wheat ears are golden even in the moonlight, their kernels plump and heavy with the condensed sunshine of summer. They are the first fruits, given back to the source from which they came, a gesture as old as agriculture itself. In them, Demeter reads the story of the season, the late frost that threatened the young shoots, the perfect rains of early summer, the long, hot days that filled the kernels with sweetness, the cool nights that hardened them to perfection. As her hand warms the stone, the golden light that spreads from her palm illuminates the tiny details of the shrine that would be invisible to mortal eyes. She sees a spider's web spun with perfect geometry in the space between two stones, each strand beaded with dew and glowing like a necklace of diamonds. The spider itself sleeps at the web's edge, its legs tucked beneath it, secure in the knowledge that this sacred space protects even the smallest creatures. She sees a ladybug, its red shell a spot of bright color against the gray stone, sleeping in a tiny crevice, its antennae twitching slightly with dreams of aphids and sunshine. She sees the faint, worn grooves on the altar where countless hands before have rested, leaving behind not just their physical touch, but their hopes, their fears, their simple, heartfelt prayers. These grooves are like rivers carved by faith, channels through which human longing has flowed toward the divine. They speak of drought years when the prayers were desperate, of abundant years when they overflowed with gratitude, of ordinary years when they were simple acknowledgments of the partnership between human and divine, earth and sky. These are not grand memories of gods and heroes, not the stuff of epic tales sung by bards in royal halls. These are the small, intimate memories of ordinary lives, a mother praying for a sick child, her tears mixing with the morning dew on this very stone as she begged for just one more harvest, one more year with her little one. Demeter remembers how she sent healing dreams to that child, how the fever broke like a wave upon the shore, receding as mysteriously as it had come. She remembers the young man hoping for a good harvest to win the hand of his beloved, his nervous hand tracing the edge of the altar as he made promises of devotion and hard work. That young man became a grandfather, she recalls, and brought his own grandsons to this shrine, teaching them the old ways. She remembers an old woman giving thanks for one more spring, her gnarled fingers leaving a single, perfect wildflower, whose name is now forgotten, but whose essence still lingers in the stone. That woman had survived famine and plenty, war and peace, had buried children and husband, and still found reason to give thanks, still found beauty in a wildflower, still believed in the turning of the seasons and the faithfulness of the earth. Each memory is a thread of light, and Demeter gathers them all into her heart, holding them with a tenderness that is both divine and deeply maternal. She is not just the goddess of the grain, but the keeper of these countless small stories, the guardian of the relationship between humanity and the earth they depend upon. Her own memories mingle with theirs, creating a tapestry of shared experience that spans millennia. She remembers the first time a mortal ever thought to leave her an offering, not this elaborate shrine, but something far simpler, a handful of wild berries left on a flat rock by a child who had been told the story of the goddess who made things grow. The berries had been slightly crushed from the child's eager grip, their juice staining the stone purple, and one had been half-eaten, as if the child had struggled between hunger and devotion. The gesture was so small, so simple, yet it had moved her more than the construction of the grandest temples, more than the 100 white oxen sacrificed in her honor by kings seeking good harvests. It was a recognition, a connection, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond between the giver and the gift, between the human and the divine, between need and abundance. That child had understood something that many learned priests never grasped, that the gods are not distant, demanding figures requiring grand gestures, but present companions in the daily struggle and joy of existence, pleased by sincerity more than spectacle. The golden light pulses softly, in time with her breath, in time with the slow heartbeat of the earth itself. In this glow, time seems to dissolve like salt in water. Past, present, and future merge into one eternal moment of connection. She feels the presence of every soul who has sought comfort in this place, their combined hopes and fears, creating an almost palpable atmosphere of human longing and divine response. The shrine becomes not just a pile of stones, but a living repository of faith, a battery charged with centuries of belief, a focal point where the mortal and immortal worlds touch and blend. Rising slowly, her knees leaving slight impressions in the soft earth that will fill with tomorrow's dew, Demeter touches the altar once more in farewell. The golden glow fades gradually, like the last light of sunset, but a warmth remains in the stones that will last until dawn. The offerings remain undisturbed, the poppy petals perhaps stirring slightly in a breeze that touches nothing else. The wheat ears standing proud and golden, waiting for the morning sun to find them. Beyond the shrine, the path narrows into a lane lined with cypress and myrtle, their shadows lying across the dust like folded wings. The cypress trees stand tall and dark, their forms like solemn sentinels guarding the way, while the myrtle bushes cluster at their feet, their their smaller, friendlier presence softening the austerity of their taller companions. Moonlight drips through the branches to pool in small silver mirrors on the ground, creating a path of light that seems to lead somewhere beyond the physical world. The goddess lingers here, tracing her fingertips along the bark of an ancient cypress, feeling the slow pulse of sap beneath, the patient circulation that keeps these trees alive for centuries. The bark is deeply grooved, each ridge and valley a record of years past, storms weathered, droughts survived. She reads the tree's history in these patterns. Here, a scar from lightning that struck but did not kill. There, a smooth patch where lovers carved their initials 100 years ago. The letters now stretched and distorted by growth, but still readable to her divine sight. She thinks of her daughter, far away beneath the world, and for the first time tonight, a different emotion colors her peace. But the thought of Persephone is not sharp anymore, not the tearing agony it once was. The pain has been worn smooth by seasons of waiting, by countless dawns spent watching the horizon for the first pale curl of returning light that signals spring's approach. Where once there was a wound that would not heal, there is now a quiet hollow, kept soft by ritual, and by the certainty that every seed must disappear into darkness before it can reappear in light. The hollow does not ache tonight, it merely breathes with her, a space in her heart that expands and contracts with each breath. It is the space that Persephone fills when she returns each spring, running up from the underworld with flowers in her hair and laughter on her lips. It is the space that holds memory and hope in equal measure during the long months of separation. It has become, over the centuries, not a source of pain, but a source of strength, a reminder that love transcends distance, that connection survives separation, that every ending contains within it the seed of a new beginning. The cypress trees understand this, she thinks. They are trees of mourning, yes, but also of endurance. Their roots go deep, deeper than almost any other tree, seeking water in the hidden places far beneath the surface. They can survive when other trees fail, standing green and tall through the harshest summers, the coldest winters. They are reminders that life persists, that grief can be transformed into strength, that what seems like death is often merely patience. The myrtle bushes offer a different lesson. They are plants of love, sacred to Aphrodite, but here in Demeter's presence, they speak of a different kind of love, not the burning passion of new romance, but the steady, enduring love of a mother for her child, of the earth for all who live upon it. Their leaves release a sweet fragrance when brushed, and she deliberately trails her hand through them, releasing clouds of scent into the night air. The fragrance mingles with the resinous smell of the cypress, creating a perfume that is both solemn and sweet, like joy remembered in the midst of sorrow. The interplay of light and shadow in the lane creates a constantly shifting pattern, a slow dance between visibility and mystery. As clouds drift across the moon, The silver pools on the ground dim and brighten, disappear and reappear, like thoughts surfacing in a meditative mind. Demeter watches this play of light with the patience of one who has observed countless such nights, each one similar yet unique, like waves on a shore or leaves on a tree. A soft wind moves through the lane, carrying new scents from distant places. She detects pomegranates, faint but unmistakable, and for a moment her step falters. Pomegranates, the fruit that sealed her daughter's fate, the food of the dead that Persephone tasted in her innocence, or perhaps her wisdom, binding her to Hades for part of each year. 6 seeds, such small things to change the world, to create the seasons, to establish the rhythm by which all agricultural life now moves. But tonight, even the scent of pomegranates cannot disturb her deep peace. She has made her peace with that fruit, with the choice her daughter made, with Hades himself. The pomegranate has become not a symbol of loss, but of covenant, of the necessary balance between light and dark, growth and rest, the upper world and the lower. Without the pomegranate, without Persephone's descent, there would be no winter, no time for the earth to rest and renew itself. The endless growth would eventually exhaust the soil, would burn out like a fire with too much fuel and not enough air. The wind also carries the scent of distant sea salt, reminding her that even this inland valley is connected to the greater world. The sea that borders the land is under Poseidon's rule, but its moisture feeds the clouds that bring rain to her fields. Everything is connected, she reflects, every god and goddess part of a greater whole, every element necessary for the balance of the world. The salt speaks of tears as well as seas, of the human condition that includes sorrow as naturally as joy. In the wind, she hears the faint echo of women's voices from the village, beyond the hill, not words, for they are too distant for that. Only the murmur of lullabies sung over cradles, the gentle hush of mothers settling children beneath woven blankets. The sound touches something deep within her, a resonance that goes beyond her personal loss to encompass all the mothers who have ever sung their children to sleep, all the children who have ever been lulled by loving voices into dreams. She closes her eyes and lets the sound settle against her heart like a bird coming home to roost. From this sound, she takes what she needs, the reminder that motherhood is not hers alone, that across the world, in countless homes, the same drama of love and care, separation and reunion, plays out on a human scale. She is both unique in her divine sorrow and utterly common in her maternal experience. This thought does not diminish her, but expands her, makes her not just Demeter, but all mothers, not just goddess, but woman. Taking from the voices what she needs, she gives back a blessing she does not speak aloud, but sends on the wind like seeds of light. May the grain stand tall through storm and sunshine. May the larders be full when winter comes. May the little ones sleep without fear of empty bowls or cold hearths. The wind carries the blessing away, and scatters it like thistledown across the sleeping fields, where it settles into the earth and waits, patient as seeds, for the proper time to sprout into abundance. The lane opens gradually into a broader meadow where fireflies drift in slow spirals, each light a tiny hearth carried by invisible hands. Their cold light pulses with a rhythm that seems synchronized to some great, slow heartbeat, perhaps the earth's, perhaps her own. Here the moonlight is less interrupted by leaves and branches. It pours down like a river of light, and she wades through it, feeling it cool and silky against her skin, almost tangible in its brightness. The grasses of the meadow part before her, showing her the way to a low stone well, whose rim is thick with moss. This is not one of the grand wells of a city, carved with dedications and surrounded by marble platforms. This is a country well, simple and functional, but no less sacred for its humility. The moss that grows on its rim is like velvet beneath her fingers, soft and slightly damp with dew. She seats herself upon the rim, the stone still holding a ghost of warmth from the day's vanished sun. Positioning herself between the depths of the earth and the heights of the sky, gazing into the well is like looking into the eye of the earth itself. The surface of the water far below is black glass, so still it might be solid, reflecting moon and stars, and her own tranquil face with perfect clarity. But she sees deeper than the surface, deeper than the reflection. In the water, she sees the memory of every spring she has ever blessed, every stream coaxed from the heart of rock to sing across the land. Water is not her primary domain that belongs to Poseidon and the nymphs, but water is necessary for growth. And so she has learned its ways, its secret paths through stone and soil. She dips her fingers into the well, having to lean forward to reach the water, and the cold is shocking against her warm skin. The water closes over her fingers like silk sleeves, welcoming her touch. Tiny ripples spread outward from the point of contact, carrying starlight in ever-widening rings that eventually reach the stone walls and return, creating an interference pattern of light and shadow that speaks of complexity arising from simplicity. Somewhere in the depths below, the well remembers the first rain that ever fell upon the earth, in that time before time when the world was new and unformed. It remembers the slow percolation through rock layers, the patient gathering in underground streams, the eventual emergence into daylight. It remembers every bucket lowered into its depths, every throat it has eased, every field it has watered. The well sings these memories back to her in faint, wordless notes that resonate through the stone and into her bones. She cups water in her palm and lifts it, watching the liquid light run between her fingers and fall back into the depths. Each drop carries a blessing, a small gift of fertility and growth that will spread through the underground waterways to emerge in springs and streams throughout the valley. This is how she works, not through grand gestures, but through these small, patient actions that accumulate over time into abundance. Time drifts in the meadow, measured only by the slow wheeling of constellations above and the gradual accumulation of dew on grass and stone. The fireflies continue their dance, some rising high enough to mingle with the stars, creating momentary confusion about which lights belong to earth and which to heaven. A fox passes at the edge of the meadow, its eyes reflecting green for a moment before it melts back into the shadows, respecting the goddess peace. An owl calls from somewhere in the darkness, its voice like liquid moonlight given sound. She rises eventually from the well, her reflection fragmenting and reforming in the disturbed water. The meadow extends before her, silver and shadow in equal measure, leading toward a grove of fig trees whose broad leaves create a different quality of darkness, warmer and more welcoming than the austere shadows of the cypress. As she walks toward them, she feels the temperature change subtly, the air growing warmer and more humid, scented with the sweet, complex fragrance of ripe fruit. The fig grove is like entering another world, a world of abundance and sensuality after the spare beauty of the open meadow. The trees grow close together, their branches intertwining overhead to create a canopy so dense that only occasional drops of moonlight penetrate. The air is thick with the scent of figs, some still green and hard on the branch, others so ripe they have split open, revealing their red, seed-studded hearts to the night. She chooses a low branch, heavy with fruit, running her hands along it until she finds what she seeks, a fig at the perfect moment of ripeness, its skin purple-black and slightly soft, giving slightly under her gentle pressure. She plucks it carefully, cradling it in her palm like a small, precious egg. The skin is tender, already splitting slightly at the top to reveal the crimson seeds nestled in amber flesh, like garnets set in honey. She lifts it to her lips, biting carefully, and the sweetness floods her mouth, not the simple sweetness of honey or sugar cane, but a complex flavor that speaks of sun and rain, of patient growth, of the alchemy that transforms earth and water into this moment of perfect taste. The seeds crunch slightly between her teeth, each one carrying the potential for a new tree, a new grove, a new generation of sweetness. She eats slowly, savoring not just the flavor, but the entire process of nourishment, feeling the fruit become part of her, its essence merging with her own. The fig is sustenance, yes, but it is also communion. In eating it, she participates in the cycle she governs, becomes not just the goddess of harvest, but the harvest itself, not just the provider, but the provided. For a moment, the boundaries dissolve. She is the fig, the seed, the soil, the sun, all of it held in perfect balance, all of it necessary, all of it sacred. She leaves the rest of the fruit untouched, a quiet offering to the night creatures who will come later, padding softly through the shadows to feed beneath the watchful moon. She knows they will come, the foxes and badgers, the small mice and voles, even the birds that prefer darkness to day. The grove is a place of sharing, where abundance is not hoarded but distributed, where even the least creature receives its portion. Moving deeper into the grove, she finds an ancient fig tree, its trunk so massive that its base is like a collection of smaller trees fused together, creating hollows and shelters where small animals make their homes. She rests her hand on the bark, feeling the slow life within, the patient circulation that has kept this tree alive for perhaps 1,000 years. In its memory, she sees the grove's history, how it began with a single tree, a seed dropped by a bird, how it slowly expanded as that first tree sent out shoots that became new trunks, creating this cathedral of green. Beyond the grove, the land begins its gentle rise toward the hill where the temple stands, her ultimate destination tonight. She takes the winding path slowly, feeling the slope through the soles of her feet, the earth rising to meet her like a slow, deep breath. The path here is older, worn by countless feet over countless years, not just the feet of priests and suppliants, but of farmers checking their fields, lovers seeking privacy, children playing games of gods and heroes. Olive trees line the path, their trunks twisted into fantastic shapes by age and weather. These are not the young, carefully tended trees of commercial groves, but ancient wild olives, survivors from a time before human cultivation. Their leaves shimmer silver green in the moonlight, whispering in a tongue older than any human speech, telling stories of the centuries they have witnessed. She pauses beneath one particularly ancient tree, its trunk wide enough that 3 people could not encircle it with outstretched arms. The tree is hollow in places, its wood worn smooth by time and weather, but it lives still, sending out new shoots from gnarled branches, producing small, bitter olives that only the birds appreciate. Here she spent many evenings during the long season of absence, when Persephone first descended to the underworld, and the world turned cold with her grief. She remembers pressing her brow to the rough bark, letting its steadfastness anchor her while grief ebbed and flowed like a tide. The tree had offered no comfort in words trees do not speak as humans understand speech, but its presence had been a form of comfort nonetheless. It had survived its own losses, branches torn away by storms, roots exposed by erosion, years of drought that left it barely clinging to life. Yet it endured, adapted, continued to reach toward the light. Tonight the tree remembers those evenings and offers its strength again, though she needs it less desperately now. She rests her cheek against the bark, feeling its warmth, for the tree holds the day's heat longer than the air. Its rough texture, like a hand worn by honest work, the tree's life force pulses slowly beneath the bark, a rhythm so slow it would be imperceptible to mortal senses, but to her it is clear as a drumbeat. A single olive drops into her open palm not by chance, she knows, but as a gift, an acknowledgement of their shared history. The olive is small and wrinkled, its skin purple-black and slightly soft. She closes her fingers around it, feeling its weight, its potential. This single fruit contains oil that could fuel a lamp, providing light in darkness. It could be pressed for the oil that anoints kings and corpses alike, that flavors food and soothes wounds. Or it could be planted, beginning another tree that might stand for 1,000 years. She holds onto the olive as she continues up the path, a talisman of endurance, a reminder that life persists through all seasons, all sorrows. The path grows steeper, and she feels the pleasant burn in her legs, the reminder that even divine bodies exist in relationship with the physical world. The exertion brings warmth to her skin, makes her breath come slightly faster, connects her even more deeply to the mortals who climb this path with offerings and prayers. Higher up, the path levels onto a terrace paved in pale stone, carved from the mountain itself by human hands, guided by divine inspiration. Torches stand at the corners, their flames kept low, so that they merely halo the marble rather than blaze against the night. The fire is fed by sacred oil, pressed from olives like the one in her hand, and scented with herbs that release their fragrance into the night air. Rosemary for remembrance, thyme for courage, lavender for peace. She steps between the torches, feeling their warmth on her skin, and ascends the shallow stairs to the temple portico. Each step is worn smooth by the passage of feet, creating subtle depressions that guide her steps. The columns rise around her, slender and patient, their fluting catching moonlight in soft ridges and hollows. They are carved from Parian marble, white as snow, but warm to the touch, as if they generate their own gentle heat. Within, the sanctuary is open to the sky. There is no roof, only the vast calm of night arched above like a protective hand. This is her preference. She has never loved the closed temples with their smoke-darkened ceilings and their separation from the natural world. Here, the stars are visible, participants in the sacred space rather than distant observers. The moon, now directly overhead, pours its light into the sanctuary like water into a bowl. At the center stands the altar, simple and unadorned, hewn from the same stone as the mountain itself. It has not been polished or carved with elaborate decorations. Its beauty lies in its simplicity, its honest presentation of stone as stone, earth as earth. She approaches it as she would approach a cradle, with reverence and gentleness, aware that she stands in a place where the human and divine worlds meet and merge. Upon the altar lies a sheaf of newly reaped wheat, bound with blue flax ribbon the color of a summer sky. Beside it rests a single pomegranate, its skin deep as dusk, placed there by some thoughtful worshiper who understands the full story of her joy and sorrow. There are other offerings too: a clay jar of honey, its wax seal unbroken, a handful of barley grains arranged in a spiral pattern, the first pressing of olive oil in a small alabaster vessel, dried figs strung on a cord of braided grass. She kneels before the altar, her knees finding the smooth depressions worn by countless other kneelers. Pressing her palms together in a gesture that is not quite prayer and not quite greeting, but something softer, a meeting between old friends, she contemplates these offerings. Each represents hours of human labor, sacrifice made from sometimes meager stores, faith expressed in tangible form. The moonlight pools in the shallow bowl carved into the altar's surface, creating a mirror of light. She lifts the wheat sheaf, feeling the weight of the grains, each kernel a small sun stored in miniature. The stalks are perfectly dried, cut at just the right moment when the grain was fully ripe, but had not yet begun to shatter. She can read the care in every detail. How the stalks were selected for uniformity, how they were bound with precisely even pressure, how the ribbon was tied in the ancient pattern that her priests have taught for generations. She lets the wheat heads brush her cheek, and the scent rises dry, sweet, laced with the memory of summer afternoons and the rhythmic sound of scythes. In this simple sheaf, she feels the presence of the harvester who cut it, the child who gleaned the fallen grains, the woman who bound it with careful hands, the priest who placed it here with words of gratitude. All of their touches linger in the wheat like signatures. Setting the wheat down gently, she takes up the pomegranate, turning it slowly so that its rind catches the silver light. Its weight is satisfying in her hands, speaking of the juice contained within, the seeds packed in their white membrane chambers. The crown at its top is still fresh, a circlet of tiny leaves that have not yet withered, suggesting it was picked this very day. She presses her thumb to the skin, feeling the slight give beneath, the promise of the treasures within. She thinks of the hidden seeds, each one a jewel of memory, of separation and return. 6 seeds her daughter ate, binding herself to the underworld for 6 months of each year. Such a small number to reshape the world, to create winter, to establish the eternal rhythm of loss and restoration. Yet in accepting this pomegranate on her altar, she acknowledges that the loss brought its own gifts. The earth's needed rest, the appreciation that comes from absence, the joy of reunion made sweeter by separation. She returns the pomegranate to its place unopened. For tonight is not a night for breaking, but for tending, not for revealing, but for honoring things as they are. The fruit will remain whole until the morning, when the priests will divide it among themselves, eating the seeds in remembrance of divine sorrow, transformed into divine order. Behind the altar rises a low bench of smooth white marble, carved from a single block and polished until it seems to glow with inner light. She settles upon it, the stone holding the faint, lingering warmth of the day's sun, despite the hours of darkness that have passed. From here, she can see the entire valley spread below through the open columns. The silvered fields like a vast sea, the dark line of cypress marking the lane she walked, the faint glimmer of the well like a fallen star, The grove, a deeper patch of shadow among shadows. She breathes deeply, drawing in the night air flavored with all the scents of her journey, earth and water, leaf and fruit, smoke and stone. The night breathes with her, the whole valley rising and falling in a rhythm as old as the world. Above, the stars have shifted slightly in their eternal dance. The Pleiades are climbing toward their zenith, their cluster like a handful of spilled salt across velvet, like the seeds of light from which new worlds might grow. She watches them, remembering the old stories that say they were once 7 sisters who danced so gracefully the sky itself paused to listen, then lifted them up to save them from unwanted pursuit. She smiles at the memory, thinking how humans create stories to explain the inexplicable, to make the vast cosmos feel more intimate, more comprehensible. Yet, in their stories, they often touch on truths deeper than they know. The stars do dance in their slow way, and the sky does pause to listen to beauty. And sometimes salvation comes in transformation rather than escape. The smile lingers on her face, soft as moonlight on water, warming her features with a gentleness that would surprise those who know her only as the goddess of harvest, who imagine her always busy with the work of growth. But she knows what gardeners know, that the quiet times are as important as the busy ones. That rest is not the opposite of work, but its necessary companion, that in stillness the deepest growth occurs. Somewhere nearby an owl calls once, a single liquid note that falls into silence like a drop of water into a still pool. The sound seems to crystallize the night, to make perfect the peace that has been building throughout her journey. She turns her head toward the sound, though she does not try to see the bird. It is enough to know it is there, sentinel of the night, fellow observer of the sacred darkness. The air moves again, cooler now as the night deepens toward its darkest hour. It carries the distant scent of the sea beyond the hills' brine and seaweed, and the faint suggestion of a storm that will never reach this sheltered valley. The storm will spend itself over the water, feeding the fish and stirring the depths, while here the peace will remain unbroken. She closes her eyes and lets the mingled scents settle around her like a cloak, woven from all the elements of the Mediterranean world. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she sees the slow spiral of seasons, not as a burden or a curse, but as a dance she has learned to love. She sees seed to shoot to ear to grain to seed again, the earth turning like a great spindle wound by invisible hands, each rotation measured in quiet rituals and the hush of falling chaff. She sees her daughter dancing in fields of asphodel, neither happy nor sad, but something deeper complete in her dual nature, bride of darkness and child of light. She sees the pomegranate seeds not as chains, but as choices, each one deliberately taken, creating a bridge between the worlds above and below. For Persephone understood something in that moment of eating that even Demeter had not yet grasped. That light needs shadow to define it, that eternal summer would be as much a curse as eternal winter, that in the rhythm of departure and return lies the secret of renewal. When she opens her eyes once more, the altar's bowl has gathered enough moonlight to become a scrying mirror. She leans forward and peers into it, seeing not the reflection of the present, but visions of the past flowing like water. The liquid light shows her the valley as it was in earliest spring, when Persephone's first footstep fell on the warming earth. The soil was dark and open then, ready to receive, and the first green blades pushed through like infants' fingers reaching for their mother. She watches the memory play out in the bowl of light. The morning mist rising from furrows like the breath of the awakening earth. The faint hush of her own footsteps as she walked among the sprouting fields with her daughter beside her. She sees herself placing her palm against the earth to feel for warmth, while Persephone danced between the rows, her laughter rising like birdsong. She watches the blades thicken, the heads form, the grain turn gold as summer advances and Persephone's time grows short. The vision shifts, showing the reapers moving in steady rhythm, their sickles flashing like slow lightning, gathering the grain while Persephone prepares for her descent. All of it occurs in the silence of memory, as dreams occur, layers of time compressed into single moments of understanding. She feels the peace of acceptance settle into her bones, deeper than marrow, older than sorrow. Footsteps approach, soft as moth wings on night air. She does not turn, for the presence is as familiar as her own heartbeat, as beloved as sunlight. The sound is not physical. No mortal foot disturbs the sanctuary tonight, but something deeper. A presence felt in the soul rather than the ears. A small figure materializes from moonlight and memory, stepping into the sanctuary with the lightness of a dream made manifest. It is Persephone as she was, as she always is in Demeter's heart. A child on the edge of womanhood, barefoot, wearing a robe the color of barley at sunrise. Her hair is loose and dark, flowing like water over her shoulders, scented with pomegranate blossoms that speak of both worlds. Her eyes hold the quiet depth of wells, the wisdom of one who has looked on death and life, and found them both part of the same tapestry. They sit together without words, mother and daughter, the space between them filled with the soft hush of night and the gentle memory of every moment they have ever shared. Time becomes fluid here, all their partings and reunions existing simultaneously. 1,000 hellos and goodbyes woven into this single, eternal moment. Demeter places her arm around the small shoulders, feeling the slight weight, the steady breathing that matches her own. Together they watch the stars, the moon, the slow drift of clouds like sheep across an endless pasture. The child lifts her hand and points to a falling star that traces a brief silver line across the sky, a cosmic seed falling to plant itself in the darkness. They watch it vanish, and in its wake, the night seems even deeper, softer, more welcoming. The child leans her head against her mother's shoulder, a gesture of such simple trust that it encompasses all the love that has ever existed between parent and child. Demeter rests her cheek against the soft hair, breathing in the complex scent of flowers and fruit, earth and starlight. She feels the rhythm of the small heart beating against her side, steady and sure. And that rhythm becomes the rhythm of the valley, the earth, the turning sky. It is the pulse of life itself, neither hurried nor slow, simply continuing with the patient certainty of all natural things. Sleep drifts between them like thistledown on a summer breeze, soft and natural as twilight. The child's eyelids flutter, once, twice, then close with the perfect trust of one who knows she is safe. Demeter holds her, not tightly, only enough to keep the small body warm against the cooling air, only enough to anchor this moment in the flow of time. She feels the child's dreams begin, gentle as ripples on still water, and she watches them unfold in the shared space of their touching minds. In the dreams, she sees fields of asphodel, soft gray-white petals brushing bare feet, neither the vibrant flowers of earth nor the absence of life, but something between the gentle beauty of the liminal space. She sees a path of moonlight leading from the underworld to the upper air, a silver road that Persephone walks each spring and autumn, neither reluctant nor eager, but accepting of her role as the bridge between worlds. She sees Hades not as the grim king of the dead, but as a quiet gardener tending the souls in his care, offering Persephone a single narcissus with a smile that holds both love and resignation. The dreams are peaceful, free from the conflicts that torment waking minds. In sleep, Persephone is complete, not torn between two worlds, but inhabiting both fully, a daughter of earth and queen of shadows, bringing to each realm what it lacks. Through her, the underworld knows flower scent and laughter. Through her, the upper world understands rest and reflection. She is the pomegranate that contains both bitter rind and sweet seeds, the twilight that is neither day nor night, but partakes of both. In the hush that follows, the temple itself seems to breathe with them. The columns lean inward ever so slightly, as if listening to this reunion that happens in the space between dream and waking. The marble glows faintly, lit from within by the accumulated prayers and offerings of centuries, by the faith of countless souls who have sought comfort here. The altar's bowl reflects not stars now, but the slow drift of their shared breath misting in the cooling air. Each exhalation a small cloud that rises and dissipates like incense. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd's flute sounds once, a note so soft it might have been the wind itself, singing through a hollow reed. The melody that follows is simple, ancient, the kind of tune that has been played on hillsides since humans first learned to make music. It speaks of watching, of waiting, of the long, quiet hours when the world sleeps and someone must keep vigil. It is a song without words that nevertheless tells the oldest story, Here I am, awake in the darkness, guardian of what matters most. Demeter closes her own eyes, letting the flute note linger in her mind like the last echo of a lullaby she once sang over this same child. She feels the weight of Persephone against her, the warmth that persists despite the phantom nature of this meeting, the soft rise and fall of breath that may be memory or dream or something between. She knows that this moment exists outside ordinary time, in the eternal present, where all mothers hold their children, where all partings are healed, where love creates its own reality stronger than the division between worlds. The night deepens toward its fullest expression. The moon begins its slow descent toward the western hills, its light thinning to a pale wash that lingers on the edges of leaves, on the rim of the altar bowl, on the curve of the child's sleeping face. A faint mist rises from the valley floor, soft as milk stirred into water, creeping up the hillside on silent feet. The fields disappear beneath it one by one, until only the tops of the tallest barley stalks remain visible, like a host of small golden lanterns floating on a quiet sea. The goddess feels the mist cool against her skin, bringing with it the scent of settling dew and sleeping earth. She knows that dawn is still hours away, held back by the thickness of this peace, by the weight of contentment that slows time itself. There is no urgency here, no need to grasp or hold too tightly. The moment extends, generous as summer twilight, patient as winter dawn. A single star, the last of the Pleiades to cross the meridian, slips toward the horizon. The sky deepens from indigo to a velvet so dark it seems almost tangible, as if one could reach up and stroke it like fur. In that darkness, she senses other presences. Morpheus walks with wings of poppy and shadow, gathering dreams like a harvester gathering grain. Nyx spreads her cloak wider, drawing all things into her gentle embrace. Hypnos breathes slowly over the world, each exhalation bringing deeper peace. She feels their presence not as separate gods, but as aspects of the night itself, faces of the great mystery that renews the world through rest. The knots that day has tied immortal hearts loosen under their touch. Warriors lay down their spears and dream of harvests. Farmers release their worry and sink into visions of rain. Mothers who have fretted over sick children feel their fears dissolve into trust. Even the gods themselves partake of this renewal, laying aside their power and rivalry to simply be. Her breathing slows to match the sleeping child's, to match the breathing earth itself. Each inhalation draws in the peace of the night, the silence of stones, the patience of trees, the acceptance of water that finds its way through every obstacle. Each exhalation releases whatever remnants of day still cling to her, the memory of withered plants before Persephone's return, the echo of prayers for fertility, the weight of being needed. She breathes in fullness. She breathes out emptiness. She breathes in presence. She breathes out absence. She breathes in the eternal now. She breathes out the flowing then. The child stirs slightly in her arms, murmuring something wordless, not a word from any language of gods or mortals, but the universal sound of contentment, the small noise a sleeping child makes when adjusting to find perfect comfort. Demeter smooths the small curls back from the forehead, her touch as light as moonlight on water, as gentle as spring rain on new leaves. The hair is silk beneath her fingers, each strand catching light like spun starlight. In the valley below, the mist thickens, rising higher, swallowing the olive groves, the fig trees, the path she walked. The world becomes small and intimate, contained within this circle of columns, this bench of stone, these two forms breathing together in the darkness. The temple itself seems to fade at the edges, its boundaries becoming permeable, until it is less a building than a state of being, less a place than a moment of perfect peace. The altar's glow dims to the faintest suggestion of light, like the last coal in a hearth that has warmed a home through a long winter night. The offerings remain undisturbed: the wheat, the pomegranate, the honey and oil waiting for dawn to give them new meaning. But for now, they are simply present, witnesses to this reunion that happens in the space between sleeping and waking, between memory and dream. The moon slips behind a cloud, and everything rests in soft, perfect darkness. It is not the frightening darkness of the void, but the nurturing darkness of the womb, the restful darkness of closed eyes, the peaceful darkness that comes before dawn. In this darkness, distinctions fade: goddess and mortal, mother and daughter, joy and sorrow, presence and absence, all merge into a unity that needs no light to be complete. She feels the child's heartbeat slow, matching her own, and then slower still, until both hearts beat as one, a single gentle drum echoing the pulse of the earth far beneath. The rhythm is older than music, older than language, the first sound any of us know. It is the rhythm that rocks the cradle of the world, that moves the tides, that turns the seasons in their ancient dance. She feels herself becoming lighter, as though the marble bench beneath her is dissolving into cloud, as though the stars above are settling gently onto her shoulders like snowflakes that bring coolness without cold. The boundary between her body and the night air becomes indistinct. She is not separate from the darkness, but part of it, not holding her daughter, but holding and being held in an embrace that includes all things. The hush is complete now, a silence so profound it has its own quality of sound, the high, clear note of perfect stillness that contains within it all possible sounds. It is the silence before the first word was spoken, the silence that will follow the last star's dying, the silence that lives in the heart of every seed before it breaks open with new life. She closes her eyes once more, not to remember, but to rest, to let the night fold around them like wings, like a mother's arms, like the earth itself opening to receive the rain. Somewhere far beyond the valley, beyond the reach of mortal sight, the gates of Olympus stand open under the same star-drunk sky. The torches there burn low, with flames that cast no smoke, and the gods move quietly through colonnades of moonlit marble, their usual brilliance dimmed to match the gentle hour. They speak in murmurs too soft for mortal ears, discussing dreams rather than deeds, sharing the peace rather than dividing power. But Demeter does not go to them tonight. Her place is here, in this small circle of warmth, this cradle of night where the divine touches the earthly without overwhelming it. The grand halls of Olympus, with their golden tables and ambrosial feasts, their eternal day and unchanging perfection, hold no appeal compared to this simple temple, this hard bench, this weight of a sleeping child who exists more in heart than in form. The last thing she feels is the child's breath, soft as thistledown, against her neck, each exhalation a small blessing, a whisper of life continuing despite all separations. The last thing she hears is the hush of the earth turning on its axis, slow and sure, carrying them both toward dawn that will come in its own time, neither hurried nor delayed, bringing with it another day of growth and rest, another link in the eternal chain. And then, even that fades into the greater silence. The temple becomes only a whisper of stone beneath stars that are themselves only whispers of light in the vast darkness. The valley is only a dream the earth is dreaming, each field and tree and stone a thought in the deep mind of the world. The goddess and the child are only two small points of warmth in the immense, quiet dark, held gently in the palm of night that cups all things with equal tenderness. Somewhere a gate closes with the softest of sounds, not the harsh clang of metal, but the gentle settling of a door that fits perfectly in its frame. It is not a shutting out, but a closing in, a gathering of all the scattered pieces of the day into one soft, complete hush. The stars wheel once more in their courses, tracing patterns older than names, then grow still, as if they too have found their rest. The moon slips lower, touching the edge of the world with a kiss as light as a mother's lips on a sleeping child's forehead. The mist rises higher, until even the temple is wrapped in its soft embrace, until the whole world becomes a single, peaceful thought in the mind of night, and everything drifts like barley on a slow river, like breath on a lullaby, like the first and last word of a story that has no need to end, because it has already become the hush that carries you, dear listener, into the gentle realm of sleep, where mothers and daughters are never parted, where the earth is always fruitful, where every ending is also a beginning, and every breath is a bridge between the worlds of waking and dream.